So, hello and welcome back to the TuneTalks podcast. I'm delighted to introduce Ellie Jamison for our second episode. Ellie is a talented songwriter, vocalist, and works within the folk and so recently drum and bass scene. So, hello Ellie.
Hey, how's it going? Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Very well.
So,
thanks, yeah.
could you give us a small introduction into what your current thing is inside the music industry and maybe a little background?
Okay, so currently I am learning to produce drum and bass, which is a massive change from what I was previously doing. But I've always been a bit of a raver, so that kind of makes sense to kind of go in that direction. But really, I wasn't actually aware that drum and bass was a thing for singer-songwriters until sort of over lockdown, because I've been out of the loop for quite some time. So started listening to drum and bass again and discovered artists like Etherwood, and then with a little bit of research realised that he was a singer-songwriter. So I thought I'd have a little bash myself. So that's kind of where where I'm heading now musically.
Nice. So just sort of going from the beginning, you mentioned that you're always been drawn to artists like Patti Smith, the Beatles, Pink Floyd, and so from these diverse musical influences, did that sort of shape your understanding of music and maybe your own style later on?
I think definitely so. Yeah, I think music is it's like a lot of people say, and I've heard people say that music is a universal language really. So it's, I think that when you grow up with music being played all around you, especially if your parents are music lovers, I think it just naturally kind of gets into your soul, doesn't it? And you just kind of, when you actually start to learn to play music.
And that was your sort of...
Yeah, it just comes out naturally, I think.
Yeah, and so among those vinyl records you fell in love with, do you have specific tracks that you feel like were the impactful ones that sort of brought you where you were in the way you now produce and previously songwrote, like the ones that were the lasting impact?
Yeah, I think the ones that sort of really captured me were some of the reggae songs. At the age of about 5, I started listening to Musical Youth. So I was only a kid, but I think just relating to the fact that they were kids themselves, and they were making this amazing music, and all the sort of the scatting and the rhyming and also the different culture. I think that really fascinated me but I was only about 5 or 6, I think, when I first heard that record. But it was just like, okay, this is a different way of seeing the world, and I think it just kind of opened my mind to that kind of thing. But sorry, can you remind me what your question was again? Because I go off on.
No, it was the it was so key tracks and the main few artists you'd say, and the tracks that really defined your sound, that you feel like looking back, that was the thing that defined how you create music in this modern day.
Wow, that is actually quite a difficult question to answer, because I couldn't necessarily sort of specify a particular track, but I think more it was like, when you're listening to music and the feeling that it gives you, and in particular Tracy Chapman had quite a profound effect. I just loved the soulfulness of her voice. There was something about it that was so real to me, and that I just felt like I could really connect with, and I started to kind of experiment. And at that time I couldn't actually play guitar or any instrument, but I was playing around with the harmonies and the lyrics and just really feeling that, I think music really is about feeling, so I think that, so definitely the Tracy Chapman stuff, and just like anything that I was listening to at that time, it just that thing of it taking you on a journey, especially if you're a child, you've got a big imagination, and you're just sort of feeling into the world. And I think music and particular artists, say like Tracy Chapman, I'm trying to think of any others. Suzanne Vega was one as well. She has a very sort of ethereal, kind of slightly strange way of expressing herself in her music and her lyrics. So it's like just that thing of taking you on a journey. But I'm just trying to think of a specific song, like Tracy Chapman, and I mean, everybody knows Fast Car, but perhaps the song Sorry. Don't know if you've heard that one. Such a beautiful song.
No, I'm not.
No, if you've got, I mean, obviously everybody knows Fast Car, especially recently since it's been kind of re-released by other artists, sort of, more popular artists nowadays. But yeah, that's track that she wrote called Sorry. If you ever get a chance to listen to it, yeah, it's beautiful, beautiful song, and it's so heartfelt, and I think that's really how my sound was originally created. When I started to write songs, it was about, that imagination, that heartfelt energy, and being able to express your innermost world, I suppose. Yeah.
And sort of, it feels like that's you explain. I think it's great that the way you think of music isn't just something you listen to, but it's like a transportation thing. It reminds you of a time almost, or a feeling, like you described, ethereal, or something that's not necessarily your standard way of listening and just engaging with something musical.
Yeah, definitely. I think back to what you were saying about that feeling. I think it's that I think as human beings we have sometimes feelings and emotions that we might not necessarily easily be able to express, and as a result, sometimes we can feel isolated. Excuse me, my dog's barking. Jump.
Yeah.
Jump, come here.
We've had this before. Don't worry.
Yeah, sorry. Come on up. So yeah, I think it's that thing of music, I suppose, connects us all, because it perhaps, especially with artists like Tracy Chapman, who's sung very much from the heart. It's, it allows you to feel like you're not actually alone, and that knowing that other people are listening to that and understanding it and relating to it, I think that kind of says everything, really. Jen, come here. I'm going to pick up. Pick up my dog. She's a little bit. She's barking at noises outside. So, yeah.
No, that's fine.
So I think that's really what I think that's what really music is about. It is about that connection with others. It's about that going deep. It's about expressing something deep within you, and expressing that alongside others who can then understand it, and then that way it brings people together too. So it's part of the human condition, I suppose, and it's that connection and expression and creativity. In that way.
And because of the social aspect of it, you're having that without word connection to someone just over a sound. It's not like you're having a conversation, but you're both on the same, not to sound cliche, wavelength.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think as well, because I think especially in the UK, well, not UK, but like the sort of the Western way of thinking about emotion, is that it's not necessarily you might say something small and they say, oh, well, moving on anyway. So how's your day been? The weather's been good, or something like that, and it's almost seen as could be potentially negative. Or are uncomfortable in some way, but I feel like when you're expressing it through music, it's creative. It's turning into something very positive, and people feel a lot more comfortable about actually express they feel more comfortable about the idea of emotions because it's coming through music, which everybody loves, right? So yeah, I feel like I feel like it's that's. In that way, it's kind of turning something potentially uncomfortable and, what some people might consider to be a negative thing into something positive and that everyone can relate to.
So we're going to switch topics a little bit here. So you talked about your pivotal moment in music was your brother's band rehearsal.
Yeah.
And so how did that come about? What was the sort of story behind that, and how that has left the marking impact for you even today?
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So I was 9 years old. My brother must have been about 11 or 12. And he was really talented guitarist. Like he was one of these kids that would just. He didn't have any lessons. He just picked up the guitar. I can't even remember. Somebody bought him a guitar. My mum or stepdad. And he had this guitar, and he could just play it almost instantly. It was like he just knew how to do it. I don't know how. So he ended up in this band that was sort of put together by some family friends who well, I say it was a band. It was more like a sort of a project for young people. I'm from Oxford originally,
right.
so it was in Oxford. And basically it was to sort of, you know, encourage young talent to come together every year, and they called the project Green Lights. So it was the band was called the Green Lights, and it was all, you know, local young musicians who wanted to have a chance to get up and play. And it was in the venue, which I think is pretty well known now. It's the Jericho Tavern in Oxford, sort of home to quite a lot of bands like Radiohead and stuff like that, where they played their first gigs there. So yeah, this one band rehearsal, I turned up with my mum, because we went to go and pick up my brother, and we turned up there, and my brother, so I say it was a project, but the guitarist and the sort of, you know, the project leader, he was also a guitar teacher, and he was sort of, you know, supporting my brother a bit. But his wife was a vocalist and singer-songwriter, and he was Sandy Connell Hinks. And sadly, she did pass away not so long after this. But she came up to me. She just had this kind of energy about her, which was she could just tune into people. And I didn't say a word. I was so shy. I just went in there. I was like, oh my goodness, you know, never been to a band rehearsal or anything like that before. And she came back to me, and she sort of like crouched down and looked at me, and she said, she said, you're a singer. And I just sort of went, okay, am I? And she went, right, I'm going off. And she printed off these lyrics to one of the songs that they were playing, and she said, here you go. I didn't say anything such as, here you go, take that home with you. You go home and practice that. Your brother knows the guitar. You practice it with your brother, and you're going to be performing that in 2 weeks' time. So it was literally just like that. And and so yeah, I was just like, oh, okay. And she'd never heard me sing. I'd never spoken a word to her. And then I can't even remember if we rehearsed it, to be honest with you, actually with the band. After that, I mean, I rehearsed it. I literally just turned up 2 weeks later and got on the stage and sang it with her. And that was just the most amazing buzz. I was 9 years old, you know, I think it was about 200, 300 people in the audience.
Oh, wow.
And I got up there and I was just absolutely, like, yeah, buzzed up. It was amazing. So I think from there, that was really, you know, how it all started, and then I got the buzz, and I carried on really from there. But I didn't start writing songs till I was about 12, and then I started playing guitar when I was about 15. So, yeah.
So for the songwriting portion of when you've done your gig and you've moved into songwriting, what was the thing that really set your career, like from where you started writing your songs? Do you still have the same feelings around how you write and the methods you use, or is it a completely different learning process and you changed how you write?
Well, as in from the very beginning when I first started writing?
Yeah, so do you feel like you still start from the same, when you sit down to write, is it from the same method, or do you have a slightly different feeling around it?
I think it really depends. Like sometimes I'll have words or even a poem that might come into my head, and I'll sort of, you know, I think I actually really like, you know, I like the meaning of that, or I like the hook of that, and I think about turning it into a song. But other times, you know, I might just start playing around with the guitar and come up with a nice, you know, chord progression, and then naturally, you know, words start to come. Yeah, I think a lot of musicians I've heard have said the same sort of thing. I think it can really vary. I think when you've got, you know, an ability to write lyrics, words, and you've got the ability to do music, I think creativity is endless. It's sort of, you know, it kind of doesn't really matter how you go about doing it, as long as it comes from an authentic place. That's what I sort of feel anyway. But sometimes it's not. I find it much easier to go from a standing point of playing music first, and then coming up with the lyrics afterwards. But yeah, there's sometimes where I might have a poem and I think, oh, I really like that. I like the way those two words go together or something, and then I think, see if I can make a song out of it.
Right. And so the little simple things and the ideas, is that something you think, like, when you've got those small ideas, was the hook or the words, do you build around that, and that's your kind of way of working?
As in, like, you know, what do I come up with the hook first, or do I come up with...
Yeah, so is that you find that and you go from there?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah, actually. But as I say, like, when I'm writing songs, something acoustically, usually I would start with a verse and then I would build up from there and then come to the hook. But if I come up with a hook in my head, then I'm like, oh right, I've got to figure out what the chords, what chords would work well with that, and then I come up with the rest of the song.
And so you started writing. What was the sort of genre of your first songs? Was it folk, or was it kind of the same genre that your brother was doing? Was that the influence into your early songwriting?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was more. I mean, my brother was really into Pink Floyd, and as I say, that's why I used to. I got quite into Pink Floyd at one point. But yeah, Pink Floyd, The Police, and Dire Straits was a big one. And yeah, some of that kind of like blues and rock styles as well. So, do you know what? I actually can't remember the first songs that I wrote. But yeah, I was sort of thinking it was probably more along that lines, like, bluesy, rocky. And I say I was very much into Patti Smith. I mean, she was my, biggest idol when I was, 9, going on to about 12, 13, and then that kind of changed. But so yeah, something a bit rocky, something with a bit of, rawness to it. But then as time progressed, what's really interesting actually is that I was very much into those kinds of styles. But when I started playing guitar when I was 15, I naturally just, whenever I wrote a song, it would just come out in a folk style. And it was like, I didn't necessarily listen to folk either, which was quite interesting. It just came out sounding folky. I don't know whether it was because there's something deep in my roots, because my granddad was Irish, and I was he played the Irish fiddle, and I don't know whether it's just sort of like talent that I picked up from a past life or something. Reaction. I don't know, but yeah, it just sort of came out that way. And I even remember sort of in my late teens going to raves and sort of hanging around with my raver friends and stuff, and listening to drum and bass and like some really heavy stuff, even some metal music and stuff. And then oh goodness, big banging going on. Not quite sure what that is. I might have to check that actually. Is it okay? Will you be able to
go
edit
ahead.
it? There's a really loud bang coming from downstairs.
Yeah, I can get it out.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Sorry about that. I'm not sure what that was, but it was
alright,
a bit disconcerting. But yeah, so I got back into my, sort of late teens, and I started listening to drum and bass and all that kind of thing. And I remember like hanging out with my friends, and they'll have a guitar or something in my room. They'd be like, "Oh, do you play guitar then?" And I'd be like, "Yeah." It's like, "Oh yeah, come on then, play us a rock tune then," or something like that. And I remember picking up my guitar and just going, "Oh, are you sure?" Being all shy or whatever, and then started playing, and they'd be like, "Whoa, hold on a minute! This is like really heartfelt folk music. What's going on?" There's like two completely different people here, but yeah, it's just interesting, isn't it? How that's just what naturally came out.
And so genres are what, like, aside, you've got your sort of natural folk style, your drum and bass, which you're working on now, but Afro Celtic seemed to be the other genre that was sort of your bag. And so what was we spoke about how emotion was the thing that drives us to music. Was there an emotion attached with the Afro Celtic sort of fusion for you, or was that just off the heart of spring?
Well, yeah, I think this is the thing. I think when you're singing, and especially when you're singing with others as well, it's like you're sharing something emotional anyway, because your voice is an instrument to your soul, really. So I feel that when I joined Back and Beyond, which was the original Afro Celt crossover band, I was 18, and I was singing with the lead singer. Her name's Sue Hart, and she kind of like took me under her wing, really, because I hadn't really played gigs. I hadn't played any professional gigs up until that point, or at least semi-professional, but nothing to that kind of level. And Yeah, I think it was quite an emotional experience, really, because the songs that we were singing were Celtic songs, you know, and they are very much. Some of them can be really quite sad, but yeah, so it is all about emotion, really. But also, I think it was that crossover between that kind of, you know, soulful Celtic singing and quite sad, you know, melancholy sound, but with that African beat and that African rhythm. That it kind of just, again, it's sort of blended, you know, it's that thing of music being a universal language, that the two just went so beautifully together. It just seemed to work. But yeah, I would say definitely it was emotional. Or at least, you know, soulful.
No.
Yeah, soulful.
Yeah, no, and it came from an emotion, and it's not just something that happened, it was a reflection of something that happened internally, maybe.
Yeah, 100%, I'd say so.
And so, experience-wise, what were the big sort of things that you will remember from that period of time within that genre?
What's the experiences I had with the band, you mean?
Yeah, so like gigs, or what were the kind of things that you take forward now and still remember as a musician today?
I think really just the people that we met when we were touring. I think, you know, and having that opportunity, because if I hadn't have met, you know, the band, I would never have had the opportunity to travel to so many different places in the world and experience other cultures, other ways of, you know, people from all walks of life who are also in the creative industry. I think that just completely, in some ways, completely overwhelmed me, but also just totally blew my mind, because it was just like, wow, this is like, there's whole other world out there which I would have not known about. And I think it definitely took me I definitely took that into my adult life, as like, you know, wherever you are, it's so easy to get into a small sort of, you know, box, if you like, or you know, a way of thinking,
bubble kind of thing.
Yeah, into a bubble. And you know, people have sometimes, you know, people in their little cliques, and you know, and it's like I've carried that in, you know, but hold on a minute, like, you're thinking this way, but there's like a whole other world out there, the way people think, the way people express themselves, and it just completely opened my mind and made me realise that kind of anything's possible if you put your mind to it, really. Or if you put yourself into the right, you know, place, if you know what I mean. If that makes sense, I don't know what I mean. If you sort of like, basically, if you feel like you're stuck in a particular situation, you know, it's that knowing that there's always another option, and there's always another world out there, you know, just waiting for you to go and explore. So yeah, I think.
And you had like in your career, you had.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Sorry, go on.
No,
go ahead.
Really. That was it, really. I was just, I was just sort of thinking that, you know, in answer to your question, that it just really. Hold on, somebody's trying to call me. I'll just turn my phone on silent. Wait there. Yeah, just to take that away with me. I think it just really sort of changed the whole way I see the world, really. And music, actually. Yeah.
And so you had your break in your career from music and in general, and then coming back to it, what was the time and the event and the emotions that, having taken that break from music making and being within it, what was the shift in, like you said, your mindset and how you felt around that time?
Yeah, I think you know, when I had the break from music, I was missing it, but I think it was something that I definitely needed at that time. But I always felt like there was something missing from my life. I think, you know, anybody who does music can really relate to that. If they take time out of music, it's just, you feel like it's a part of you that's missing. I think that it had completely happened by fluke, to be honest with you. A friend of mine was working with a girl who was learning to produce drum and bass, and to play drum and bass, obviously, and DJ. And I found out about an event online called the Hospital Records for women in drum and bass. So I just kind of, I was chatting to my friend and I said, oh hey, do you want to go along to it, and you know, you can bring this, you know, it was basically a student of hers that she was sort of, you know, teaching and encouraging, mentoring, and she was like, yeah, absolutely, let's go. So we went along, and I just sort of thought I'd bring some of my CDs just in case for my album. I don't know, I just like last minute thought. I thought, well, I'll bring some CDs along with me and see, if anybody wants to maybe remix one of my tracks. Because I had sort of felt for some time that, my music was just, I'd done this album and it was just kind of sitting there and it wasn't doing anything. And I felt a bit sad about that actually. But I thought I'll bring it along just in case. But mainly it was just to go and do something different because and maybe try and get back into the loop a little bit and, just see what's going on. And obviously at that time I had been listening to drum and bass again, so I was interested, to see what the event would be like. So yeah, we just turned up and ended up making friends with the guys from Remarkable Records, and we just sort of hit it off really. And then not so long after that they offered me a record deal. So and sort of since then they've just been supporting me to get started again, really, music, but on a different sort of path than what I was doing previously, which is obviously learning to produce drum and bass and do vocals. So yeah.
And so for this musical direction for you, where can you see that taking you? Do you feel like that the production is your sort of future bag, or is maybe vocals still your thing, or what would you say you're not so working towards, but what's on the horizon?
I think really it's I think the reason for me why I'd like to start, why I'm sort of producing, because initially I was a singer-songwriter and just I did performances, but I think really for me learning to produce is about learning to have like some control over my own music and the sounds that I want to make, and just also to be able to do it from home, because where I live in Suffolk, I don't know many people. In fact, I don't know anybody here who does music. So, or at least in the drum and bass, genre, I don't know any producers and stuff. I know some in London and sort of worldwide, but not in local areas. So, for me, it's like I was thinking it sort of makes sense for me to have some kind of knowledge of making my own music. So I think that's really the reason why I kind of decided to go down that path with producing, which by the way is a total minefield. I was just like, I've started this project, and I'm just this course that's online. It's a brilliant online course. If anybody wants to go and check it out, it's Education and Bass, and it's absolutely brilliant. But I have found that like the more I do, the more I realise that I'm just like so far. I've got so much to learn. It's like mind blowing, but it's also really exciting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm taking my time with that, and I'm not beating myself up when I can't quite get certain things, because I'm not naturally computer minded, but I'm actually probably quite proud of myself of how far I've got so far, because I really didn't imagine that would be the case. So yeah, I'm slowly starting to get my head around it. But I think that again it's getting that bass down, those roots down. If you can make your own sounds from scratch and then build your own songs around, and then build your own music, write songs, lyrics over the top of that, for me that's my ultimate goal. I would just absolutely love to get to that point where I can say, and I'm not relying on anybody else to remix my tracks or write my song, write the tracks for me so that I can write them. I'm doing it all myself. That's not to say at all that I don't enjoy collaborating with people, because I really do. But I think it's just having both options.
The end product of your own work.
Yeah, absolutely. Is kind of where I'd like to be heading. And it's a long road ahead, but I won't give up.
Yeah. No, I saw the video on your Instagram where you said drum and bass producers, I can now understand the amount of work, and it's just because it's almost like a new language, because you're going from a physical instrument, your voice, your guitar, to something that is literally not physical. You can't touch it. It's something you're learning a new language as such. Would you feel?
Yeah, absolutely. It is completely. You've just hit the nail on the head. It is completely learning a new language, and also learning tools, how to use the tools and how to navigate, the DAW when you're using it. But yeah, I was going to say something then, but You were talking about the what was it you just said? My mind's gone completely blank.
Going something physical to going from a physical instrument to something digital, and how it's a whole.
Yeah, and actually, I'm really hoping that the fact that I do have some musical knowledge, and I'm obviously a songwriter. I know how to structurise a song and play an instrument. I'm really hoping that can really support and help my production skills, you know, as I'm moving forward, because I think a lot of I've heard that some DJs when they start, or you know, producers when they start, they might not have that knowledge. I'm just really hoping that that's actually going to benefit me, you know, when it comes to when I really start getting down to it, and I really start getting good at, you know, at knowing what I'm doing when it comes to using the DAW. Yeah. So fingers crossed.
And when you're and when you're producing, do you still have like the tinges of your previous, I wouldn't say style, but like your previous experience? Does that sort of like go into your production now? Do you still see that coming back to you, or is it a whole sort of new chapter?
Oh, hold that, because I will actually mention at this point, I am very much learning, so I am totally at the beginning stages, and obviously because I'm learning to produce drum and bass, I've got to start right from scratch. So at the moment I'm learning, you know, the amen breaks, how to how to, you know, manipulate the breaks to make them sound as you want, you know, sequence them, etc. All the different, I don't know the little, you know, using the lingo, but it's basically I'm right at the very beginning, so it's learning how to sample the beats really. So I haven't actually got to that point yet. As I say, the beats, but also like the bass, and you know, making sure that they all match nicely, and you know, creating a nice bed for when I can actually start to go more to the musical element. So yeah, I'm very much a beginner, producer, basically.
Yeah.
But I'm loving it.
And you feel like the collaboration of your previous work, you feel like that's something that you would like to, when you got to the stage, bring into maybe your production?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's what I'd like to work towards. Working with different vocalists, you know, MCs. Other producers as well, like basically you know, all creatives who want to get involved. That's because again, it's like, you know, I want to have control over my own music, and to be able to, you know, create sounds that I want to create. But essentially for me, music is also a massive, you know, it's connecting with other people, and creating a good energy for people, because I think like nowadays as well, I think people need it more than ever. You know, it's tough times at the moment, isn't it, really, for so many. So yeah, I think just like having that ability to be able to develop my sound, know what my sound is, and to be able to share that with others, but spread a, you know, positive and creative, positive energy out there to others, and to connect with like-minded artists who, you know, are on the same kind of vibe, really.
Yeah, and overcoming those challenges. I mean, not just with what you've had with, not necessarily a challenge, but a new discovery. You've had your fair share of challenges, and do you feel like that has been the way you have a different outlook on the way music's affected your life, or the way you look into music or into life? Do you feel like those challenges have changed your way you navigated music, perhaps?
I think... Right, sorry, can you repeat that? Because I'm not entirely sure I fully understand the question.
No, sure. So, from your life experiences of so playing in a band and starting to learn new music and moving around the world, the challenges you've had, do you feel like that is changing the way you use music in your life? Does it maybe affect the way it integrates with your life, and how it affects the way you see your life and your life in music?
100%, yeah, absolutely 100%. I think that you know, when I first started out playing music, I was just a kid, you know, and I absolutely loved the vibe of it and the energy of it. But I think, you know, everybody struggles in some way or another as adults, and you know, we all go through difficult times. And I feel that, you know, actually music now for me is more important than ever. I think that without it, I probably wouldn't be as able as I am to be able to engage with the world in the way that I do. I think it's given me confidence. It's allowed me to express myself in a way which and be very confident about who I am. I think without music, I really don't see that could ever have been a thing. So yeah, saved my life pretty much. I'd say.
No. Well, that's been fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Ellie. It's been brilliant to sort of understand your journey and also how you feel that you're going to be pushing your career on later. So thank you very much for your time.
No worries. Thanks so much for having me. It was really good to meet you as well.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Cheers. Take care.